And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
It is indeed Friday, and welcome to the year-end 2022 version of Climate Change Roundtable. This week, we're going to do a little bit of everything, a climate crisis potpourri. And, we're going to cover a lot of different topics, some of the craziness that's going on in the media, a little bit of humor to go with it as well. The guests that we have with us today are, of course, our usual ones. We have Sterling Burnett, who is with us from Texas, where it's apparently cold, and they're getting ready to be able to have another failure of the wind turbines down there like they had a couple of years ago. Hi, Sterling.
Hello, wearing my Christmas appropriate colorful sweater.
Awesome. Well, you look toasty down there. That's good. And then, of course, we have Linnea Lueken, who's joining us from the East Coast, out on the near the Outer Banks of South Carolina, I guess you could call it. And she's going to be talking about something this week that is just mind-boggling. I got to tell you, I've been in the whole climate change business, for about 15 plus years. Sterling has too. And something happened this week in Texas that is just, on one hand, it's unbelievable because it is so blatant. On the other hand, it's not unexpected because, as you know, the climate change alarmists have tunnel vision. It's all about them and their agenda. The hell with the rest of the people that have to suffer through the kinds of policies that they want to enforce. In Texas, at a state hearing, there was a presentation made by a person who was explaining how bad the whole ESG score system was affecting him and what they were demanding him to do in order to get a loan. Now, we have seen the beginnings of this over the past few months, where the whole ESG thing has been creeping into the financial system, where, the end goal is basically, if you are not a good climate citizen, so to speak, and your ESG score is not high enough, well, then you're not going to get the loan. Now, they don't come out and say that. No, they don't want to say that because that would be bad. But they've been insinuating it. And finally, someone peeled back the covers this week and explained what they went through to get a loan. And we have a video for that we'd like to play and have you listen in. It is just mind-boggling. So if we can cue up that video and play it, let's go. Here it is.
And I'm going to provide you a couple of specific examples of how corruptive it is, looking at the ESG movement. And these are my examples. So our companies, I have a slide that illustrates this, but our companies over the years have raised a lot of capital privately and publicly. And we were doing a capital raise with a bank, Credit Suisse, that we've raised over $1 billion with over 15 years or so, probably closer to $2 billion. They and another bank had invested a lot of time and effort in a potential transaction. And the time came where we had moved sufficiently far where they need to go to the investment committee to get approval. The other bank came back that same day and said, we've got approval, thumbs up, let's go forward. Did not hear anything from Credit Suisse for several days. And so finally I called them, and he called me back, and he said, Bud, we may not be the right bank for you. And I said, really, why? And he said, and he kind of hesitated, he said, climate change is real, and it's not debatable. And I said, really? I said, well, I'm a geophysicist. I know climate change is real. Climate's always changed. It always will. But science is about debate. And he hemmed and hawed, and we had a prolonged discussion. He said, I'll tell you what, maybe there's a misunderstanding. He said, how about if I can get you some bullets to tweet? If you will tweet those out, I think there's a good chance we can go ahead and do this deal. So at that point, I knew there's no way we were going to do the deal. But I said, okay, I'm headed to a basketball game. If you will email those over to me, I'll take a look at them and we'll see. And to my surprise, he did. He emailed them over that night, and I've got the email.
Yeah, let's hold right there. So basically, extortion. That's the whole name of the game here. ESG extortion. Let's put that phrase into the lexicon, because that's what's going on here. If you don't toe the line, believe in climate change, and help promote the idea that climate change is number one in the whole world of business, that's the whole thing now, then you're not going to get a loan. And that is extortion, plain and simple. Linnea, you found this clip, and I'm pretty sure you have some comments about it. Let's let her rip.
Right. Well, and this is a lot more harrowing than some of the other stuff that we already knew about with ESG, where, they're wanting a company to put a sustainability tab on their corporate website or something like that. This is compelled speech. And it's not just that they're saying, hey, you have to acknowledge that the climate changes. They want you to take a specific stance on climate and climate policy. I'd love to see, I haven't seen him publish those bullets yet, but I'd love to see what specifically they were asking him to say, because I have a very strong feeling it wasn't something that was very politically neutral in regards to the policy side. And, this guy he works at it's like a minerals resource company, but they work in oil and gas a lot. The idea, when you go on LinkedIn or something and you look at all these other oil and gas companies and their LinkedIn profiles that just do not stop talking about climate change. It's all they post about half the time. It makes you wonder if maybe this stuff that they're doing is literally just so that they can get their loans so that projects can go forward.
Sterling, you've got some comments on this. I know that you've experienced a lot of the ESG insanity over the past several months, and you've written some stories about it. What's your take on all of this?
Past 2 years, ever since even under Trump, they were trying to do this, trying to get the government involved. It's not just the private sector; it's the government sector as well. Trying to get the government involved in publishing rules that would force all banks, small and large alike, and all companies to report on their emissions, to toe the party line on climate, to only finance politically approved projects. In Texas, I actually knew about this hearing, and I had hoped that they would invite me down, but they had a very specific goal here. This is the Texas legislature. We passed a law, the last legislative session, that said banks that penalize, that say oil and gas is bad, we're going to defund it, we're not going to back oil and gas, can no longer do business in Texas. Not with private individuals, but they can't back loans from or bond issuance from municipalities. They can't do business with the state of Texas. They can't. The state of Texas will not hold stocks and bonds in companies like BlackRock. So they created a list here in Texas. BlackRock's on it. A few others were on it. And this hearing was specifically to grill them. And it was put not in the liberal heart of Texas, but in the average person's heart of Texas, in East Texas. And BlackRock's people and other investment houses had to come down and justify why they were saying we should still do business with you, even though we think oil and gas has got to go. And of course, they backed off on a lot of that. They say, oh, but we're investing in oil and gas. Yeah, they're investing it to subvert it. That's what they did with Exxon. They bought a lot of Exxon stock, or they control a lot of Exxon stock. And then they went in and put 3 radical environmentalists on the board of Exxon who wanted the company that is founded and based on oil production to stop doing oil. That's all they want. So it was an interesting hearing. This is not... Oil and gas industry is one industry, the one we work on the most, that's in the crosshairs of ESG, but it's not the only one. And this is not the first time this has happened. Numerous gun shops around the country have noted and complained that they are no longer able to bank with their long-term banking because they are in the wrong industry. The industry decided, not that financial reasons, and this is the real problem, is banks are set up for financial reasons. And companies are set up to make a profit for their owners. And they are choosing a different metric to decide how to invest the money that they hold. And it's not making a profit, economic gain, it's social goals. And they don't like guns and they don't like oil and gas. And so they're penalizing companies in that. Now, Bank of the West got in trouble with some states. I hear, I believe Wyoming and maybe Utah said, you're not going to do business with us anymore because of what you say about oil and gas and stuff. So this is a widespread problem. It's getting worse because the Biden administration is now issuing rules. It's not going away. Sadly, this is something we'll be battling for years to come.
You know, it is insidious and it's evil. Yeah, that's the only way to describe it. They won't come out and tell you this is what it's all about. They will just simply, use it as a tool, as one commenter said, to shutter companies without cause. And it's just really nasty. The only thing I can say to people that are listening and watching is that when you encounter this stuff, push back hard, really hard. Because this is the kind of totalitarian control that we do not need in America. We're supposed to be living in a free society. And when this sort of insidious garbage gets into things like the banking industry, your ability to get a job, buy a car, buy a house, whatever, it's just evil. It's just unbelievable. And in the middle of all this, nothing has changed in terms of the way climate has been going. I want to throw in a little bit of levity before we continue this discussion. We've had some great comics this week. One of them is from my friend Josh over in England. Of course, here we have this one here, which has been circulating. You're here and you're basically responsible for the rest of the universe. That's the mindset that a lot of these folks have. But we have another one that is also pretty good, and that is this one from Josh. Look at this graph. This is the graph of CO2 since 1958. And as you can see, we've had all of these conferences, from Kyoto all the way up to COP27. Nothing has changed. Their policies are completely ineffective. ESG won't make one bit of difference when they get it implemented, except to stop you from living your life in a productive and energy-free way. That's what the whole thing is about. It's about control.
It's
32 years.
It's not just about controlling energy. It's about controlling how you live your life completely. They don't want you to own guns. They don't want you to travel and drive cars. They want you to live along rail lines. And the really insidious, awful thing of this is companies like BlackRock and big banks like Bank of America, they want you to trust them with your money, but then they want to use your money to tell you how to live. Like they know better what causes you support, what aims you should have for your retirement. And that's not what they were set up to do. They were set up to enable you to live your lives, and while in the process making a profit for them, rather than their managers getting to enforce their elitist point of views on how people ought to live. They're using your money to enforce their goals. And that's what's really bad.
Exactly. I have one other comic I want to show you. And this one came from Greenpeace. And it has to do with, there we go. This is something that Greenpeace actually tweeted out in response to a new coal mine being opened in the UK. And it's just mind-boggling. This is the way they think. It's like we're going back to the 1800s because of one coal mine, but yet they completely ignore what's going on in China and India. New power plants running on coal are opening up every week. New sources of coal are being opened up every week in China. Importing of coal is going on. And yet somehow the West is entirely the evil part here. And that belies their entire agenda, really. The whole goal here is to shut down the West and do wealth distribution. That's what it's all about, and control your life so that you can't live with the freedom that you have today. Linnea, you've been following this whole mess for a while. Do you have any comments on any of this?
I would say that their incorrect position on the coal situation would be more forgivable if their meme was not terrible.
Yeah.
Whoever's doing their social media needs to, I don't know, look at more memes or something. It's not very good.
It so badly misses the mark, right? I mean, Scrooge was the ultimate conservationist. He would let him put one little brick of coal on the fire as they all shivered. And everybody else, like that small boy there, would have been happy to have plentiful coal in their stove and chimney to keep them warm during the cold winter. Instead, they're turning it completely around as if coal wasn't the savior for most of the poor in England at that time.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, who don't pay attention to what's going on in England, the fellow at the top that's saying, "You boy, what year is it?" Portrayed as Scrooge. That's actually the newest Prime Minister of England, who, they're blaming for allowing this coal mine to open up. And it's just amazing how Greenpeace thinks. Greenpeace started out battling the bomb. That was their whole thing when they started out in the 70s. They had the focus against atomic testing. And now that that's over with, they had to find a new boogeyman, and the boogeyman is climate change. And now they're all about stopping climate change and controlling your life. And that's why one of the friends of Heartland, who was an original founder of that, left Greenpeace because he said, basically, they've gone off the rails. They really have. They're no longer about protecting humanity, like they were when they were pursuing the bomb issue. They're all about an agenda now, and it's all about big money, huge amounts of money. We skeptics are often accused of being funded by big oil or big coal or big whatever. They make up these stories about me and everybody else on this show that basically says we're nothing but a paid shill of the fossil fuel industry. Well, that's bunk. We've not ever taken a dime from any of these folks. I've never gotten a solicitation, an offer, or a check from any of these people. And I'm pretty sure that Linnea and Sterling can say the same thing. But they have to suppress you with this kind of stuff because they've got no real facts on their side. Comments?
Well, I worked with a group at one time called the American Legislative Exchange Council that creates model legislation, and I had a lobbyist that was trying to shape model legislation there that was in favor of the industry, but against taxpayers. I'm for freedom, and I'm for freedom in this in all industries. I want them to compete on an even scale. And I kept tearing up the legislation, marking it up. And he asked me, he says, "Sterling, what do I have to do to get you on my side? I bought you cigars and scotch. What do I have to do to get you to leave my legislation alone?" I says, "Well, you haven't found my price yet, but I encourage you to keep trying. I've never gotten anything from the oil industry. I wish they were showering me with hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight for their interests. Instead, as far as I can tell, at least in the major companies like Exxon and Chevron and several of the others, they are digging their own graves. They're giving environmentalists the rope, as Mark said they would, to hang themselves by supporting all these green causes. They're funding people.
I know they are.
The left that's attacking them. It's madness.
Yeah, they're trying to appease the left by getting into that. The bottom line is the left doesn't care. They're going to go after them anyway. There's no amount of appeasement or compromise that you can do that's going to appease the left. If they want you to be shut down, they will find a way. And this is part of why this whole thing about ESG is being put in. It's this insidious control mechanism to shut you down if you're not part of what they view as the solution. But the problem is there is no solution. As we saw on that graph originally from COP27, CO2 continues to increase. The rest of the world continues to do the things that they want to impose on the left.
And and who cares, because the world is not being destroyed by the increase in CO2.
That's right. And actually, the greatest thing about CO2 is it's actually enhanced humanity. It's increased crop yields. It has increased all across the board. I mean, anywhere you look, you see crop yields are going up. Now, it's not the only thing that's increased crop yields. We've had, improvements in fertilizer, improvements in genetics, and so forth and so on. But the bottom line is that despite the fact that the left continues to publish scare stories in the media about, we're going to lose the ability to grow coffee, or we're going to lose, shrimp in the oceans, or whatever it might be. They try to make this food insecurity something that is a result of climate change. But the data, when you look at it, shows completely the opposite. Everything is in much more abundant than it was 50 years ago. And that's the bottom line. Don't let them make you believe that we're in a crisis. A climate crisis is not happening. One of the other things that they do on a regular basis is they have this weather is not climate theme, or weather, is climate. Their viewpoint is any weather event, no matter what it is. We had a tornado in Iowa. That climate change. We had an ice storm in Alaska. Well, climate change. That's their whole view, that all weather now is being driven by climate. And one of the things that we do on a regular basis at climaterealism.com is debunk the whole weather is not climate thing, or the weather is climate from their viewpoint. Time and time again, we run stories showing how the data does not support these claims. And I advise you to bookmark that, climaterealism.com. And then we also have climateataglance.com, the companion website, which has a series of references that you can use in these arguments against climate alarmists. And these are all factual references. They've been vetted and checked, and they use official sources and official data. So they're pretty much unassailable. Of course, they will say, well, Heartland Institute is no good. But the bottom line is that the data behind it and the references are all solid. So check those both out, climaterealism.com and climateataglance.com. And again, push back against these people. You see stuff online, push back and push back hard, because they are trying to control your life and trying to make our future unlivable, where they're in control and you have to kowtow to their viewpoints. And make them write on the blackboard. Weather is not climate 100 times. Post it on there. Post it on the theme of the post that you're doing. Write it down 100 times if you have to, but get that through their heads. So, guys, we got an ad hoc show here today. We're doing a little bit of everything: climate crisis, potpourri. Either of you, Sterling or Linnea, have any topics that you would like to cover or discuss?
Well, I don't have a specific topic suggestion, but I do have to say that before I came to Heartland, the big secret is I did take checks from Big Oil.
Oh, no.
But I had to wear steel-toe boots and turn a wrench to get that check, so I'm not apologizing for it.
Well, full disclosure, I got a rebate once from my Shell gas card.
As climate potpourri, one topic that's getting a little play is the hypocrisy of the Biden administration on climate change and the North Atlantic right whale. I've been doing some stuff on that recently. And the same day that Biden was serving 200 Maine lobsters to the Canadian Prime Minister and assembled guest, Whole Foods, which is a private company, they can do whatever they want. They said they weren't going to sell Maine lobster anymore based on a rating from a UK marine, supposedly marine protection group. They were withdrawing their sustainable label, not because the lobster industry itself was unsustainable, because it says they were killing North Atlantic right whales. Now, this same group that gave that label, I think Whole Foods should at least make its decisions based on full knowledge and transparency. I looked into the group. One of their largest donors is the David Packard Foundation. I think David and Flora Hewlett Packard Foundation, something like that, which is a huge promoter of offshore wind farms, because climate change is the only thing that matters, so we can kill whales. There's no doubting that offshore wind farms in whale migration routes and critical habitat will kill whales. And the government's own agencies say you can't kill a single whale at this stage because they're so low and so few breeding age whales without endangering their continued survival. And yet Biden wants to put thousands of huge wind turbines right in the whales' migration with all the sound that creates. Will drive them into shipping lanes. It will create a lot more shipping in their migration route, both to construct the turbines and to service them if they become operational. It's a terrible idea for whales, but Biden is targeting the main fishing industry as they're serving their lobsters, right? They put in a rule saying you've got to either go to a different kind of trap that's radio controlled, so you'll know from a radio beacon as opposed to a single line going down to your trap when a trap is filled, or that easily breaks because that might entangle whales. Now there's a little doubt that whale entanglement's an issue for whales, but most of it's long line fishing. You know, it's so bad. Even the government admits that it's going to shut down not just the main lobster industry, but the fishing industry. That's why states are now, a group of 7 states are forming a coalition to compensate the fishing industry that they're going to shut down for offshore wind farms that will kill the whales. It's hypocrisy. Thy name is Joe Biden.
Well, hypocrisy, thy name is the entire left, literally. Okay, so Andy found an interesting thing. Yes, the whales are fighting climate change. I don't know where they get these mindsets, but my goodness.
They'll publish anything.
Well, I mean, if that's true, of course, and they're killing the whales, then they're undermining once again their claim is we need to fight climate change. The whales are helping us, but let's kill them. Okay, here it is. Scroll back up, Andy. There's basically, here it is. The whales are carbon sinks, and they've been overlooked. So we have to have more whales to sequester carbon. All right. Well, doesn't the human population do that, you fools? We have more people. Don't they sequester carbon? I forget the last time the whales planted trees, but that's just me. Yeah. The whale, the new spokesman for the Arbor Day Foundation. It just goes to show you the length of contortions that the left will go to in order to make climate change important or relevant or whatever. And you know, they just don't have a whole, they're not operating with a full deck sometimes when you see stories like this. That's my viewpoint.
How dare you?
and then the Biden administration, you know, it once again, it's violating the law and didn't do its next round of lease sales that it's supposed to do by law. They're back in court again, being sued for not doing what the law says they are supposed to do. But at the same time, it's allowing oil companies to go down to Venezuela and produce more oil. So somehow they think oil here harms climate change, and oil in Venezuela, under much more primitive conditions, does not. Yeah. For those of you that don't know what a carbon sink is, let me explain a little bit. Now, the left has been fascinated with this idea that we can take carbon dioxide out of the air, which they call carbon because, you know, they didn't take chemistry in high school. So they call it carbon. And the idea is that they want to take the carbon dioxide out of the air and put it into the ground and sequester it. And by doing so, they will be able to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The idea is completely, totally ludicrous because of the scale involved. I mean, the amount of carbon dioxide that's produced naturally is you know, about 96% of all carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But that we couldn't even begin to touch it. We couldn't make a blip. And the proof of the pudding in this comes from when we had the pandemic. Now you can see this on Climate at a Glance. We have a topic on it there about you know, the amount of carbon dioxide reduction in the atmosphere that supposedly happened when we had the pandemic. You know, we shut down the industries, we shut down transportation and other things. There was nothing measurable in the change of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It just kept going up.
Part of that has to do with natural things that are going on. We're coming out of the little ice age some years ago. And for those of you that don't know, carbon in the oceans, carbon dioxide in the oceans specifically, bubbles up and comes out of the ocean as the planet warms naturally. So as we've got a natural warming coming out of the little ice age, and remember, the planet works on long time scales. The human view of time scales boils down to weather, and that's why they think weather is climate. But the bottom line is that the time scales associated with the planet are very, very long, hundreds and thousands of years. So as the Earth naturally warms, we get the carbon dioxide bubbling up out of the ocean and going into the atmosphere. It's the same thing that happens if you have soda pop and you leave it in your car. Everybody, I'm pretty sure, has experienced this, or at least on some level, where you've got a warm soda pop, you make the mistake of opening it, and it goes all over the place. That's what happens. The solubility of carbon dioxide in water lessens when the temperature goes up. You can take that same 6-pack of cans of soda pop and put it in the refrigerator and do a test side by side, warm versus cold. The cold won't even hardly give a fizz. The warm or the hot soda will blow all over the place. So that's what's going on with the oceans. We have a bubbling up of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that is responsible for a good portion of that carbon dioxide curve that we showed in that comic at the very beginning, and why all these COP conferences, ESG, and everything else that the left is pushing is it completely has no effect. The amount of scale involved is just, you know, we're talking huge differences versus what humans can do versus what nature can do. That's the bottom line.
Linnea? Bottom line, because Stone Cold says so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, okay, so we're going to be talking about the next crazy folly this week. You know, Alexandria Occasional Cortex, AOC, has produced a movie. Oh, yes, because, you know, she's an expert on virtually everything, right? Climate, border walls, you know, all that stuff. So she produced a movie, and it went into theaters this week. And guess what? It was a mega flop, huge mega flop. $80 per theater on opening weekend. We have a trailer that you can play. And, you know, if you want to step away from your computer so that you don't have to listen to this, I totally understand. Go ahead and play that, Andy.
Or change politically requires faith.
We are building an army of young people to stop the climate crisis and create millions of good jobs for our generation.
Everyone wants to talk about this dispassionately, but this is the world that I will raise my kids in.
The more centrist wing is arguing that they want to maintain the status quo.
Ain't nobody gonna keep us down.
This is going to be the moonshot of our generation.
Moments of crisis crack open the window of possibility. Sometimes I feel like my job is to get my hands dirty. You're not going to trick us. Hell no.
Now is the time to leverage our power. We have tens of thousands of new people joining.
We're in the battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. Make them feel like they're going to lose their seats if they don't support this. As long as there are people that you can poison without consequence, there will always be a loophole that the fossil fuel industry can exploit. It's possible to both decarbonize and keep equity and justice at the center. That was classy. Oh, thank you. I'm not often called classy. Tell my mom. The media is expecting us to fail.
Some of us have to actually live the future that you all are setting on fire.
We're going to make historic investments, and we'll seize the opportunity.
We got the candidate that was nominated to come to us.
We're either going to go out in a blaze of glory, or we're going to win what we want.
America has faced threats before and come out stronger.
You're 1 one step away from success, that's when they want you to think you're the furthest. But you are close. You are close.
And higher and higher. We know how to fly.
Oh, goodness. To the end. And well, the bottom line is that no one, literally no one, except a few of her followers, went to this movie. This may in fact be the least performing movie in the history, or documentary in the history of documentaries, when you've only got $80 per theater on opening weekend. My goodness, what does that say? No one cares.
More people may have seen the trailer watching our video feed here than saw the movie in the theaters.
That's probably true. That's probably true. And the whole thing that is there is, of course, she's the star, and she is using government to solve the climate crisis. That's the whole push of this. I want to go back to this cartoon that we showed you earlier. Here we go. Here's government doing all these conferences, and then we've got the CO2 graph since 1958 as measured at Mauna Loa in Hawaii. And look at that. All these conferences, all these government edicts haven't done one damn thing. AOC will be just as ineffective as the rest of these clowns. And that's the bottom line. They can't do anything.
Well, it's almost certainly the case that she generated more carbon dioxide emissions in making this film, and in the crews that she had to move around to do the filming, in her own travel, in all the different places they went, in producing it, in shipping it to the theaters, and in their their limited audience. I guess one blessing, if you're worried about CO2, is so few people actually went to the theater to see it.
Sorry, I was laughing at the comment.
They produced more CO2 than they'll prevent. In fact, they just, even by their own lights, they're making the situation worse. Now they say, "Oh well, we're motivating people. We're motivating." Yeah, you're motivating people to destroy property, which will then be replaced with insurance. You destroy a classic painting, they're going to have to pay somebody to restore it. You burn a home or an SUV, insurance is going to pay, and it's going to be replaced. The materials that go into that are producing more CO2. It's crazy. They don't understand how the world really works, as opposed to in their idealized dreams that if they burn an SUV, it won't be replaced. People will just now sit by the side of the road and walk to get the groceries. That's just false.
Yeah. And, I've just, this comment here from TM Willemse, a case of man-spreading, just gave me the perfect meme that I'm going to get my cartoon friend Josh on it, because he'll do this perfectly. What we've got basically is mansplaining, M-A-N-N, going on here with climate. Mansplaining. That's the whole thing. You look at Michael Mann and all of his utterances and things that he says about what we have to do with our lives and whatever. It's a case of mansplaining climate. That's what's going on here. So we're gonna run with that meme. Sorry, Linnea, if I offended you, with that particular term.
Not at all.
Yeah. In any event, so we have we've, like I say, kind of a potpourri show today. So for those of you that have questions, anything at all, nothing's off limits about climate, energy, whatever, let us know in comments and we'll try to answer them. At this point, I'm going to basically go to open forum. And Linnea, if you've got some topics that you want to cover, let's hear them. Sure.
I've got two things that I found interesting this week. One, I think, was posted just this morning to your website, Anthony. What's up with that? And it was about how we're exploiting, or Europe is exploiting, these African nations when it comes to the climate issue and decarbonizing. So there was a comment from, I think, the president of, I want to say Ghana, but it might be someone else, and I'm misquoting, but he basically said that it is completely unbelievable that Europe and much of the West is withdrawing funding from African nations if they proceed with, and banks too, are withdrawing funding from African nations if they proceed with development of fossil fuel resources for themselves, but they're supporting it if you then ship the oil and gas to Europe. So basically what they're doing to these people is unconscionable. I mean, they have just as much of a right as any of us do to developing their resources and industrializing. But for whatever reason, the powers that be, including the ESG allied banking system, is opposed to specifically them developing their resources for themselves, but they'll still happily take it for their own factories and their own electricity production. So,
well, I'll be interested to see. You, as you know, HSBC just said they would no longer give money to oil and gas development. They're one of the largest, or if not the largest, bank in Europe. But France has opened 2 new coal mines. Are they going to tell the French government, sorry, we're not going to do business with you? I'll be interested to see them say that. You know, in England, I think Hibernia, I think they're based in Scotland originally. England's opening its own coal mine. Now it's for coking steel coal. Are they going to tell the British government, so you're contributing global warming, we're no longer going to do business with you? I suspect not. And we're putting ourselves in a pretty dangerous geopolitical, an even more dangerous geopolitical situation than we're already in, with all these banks in the West saying we won't finance development in African, Asian, and South American nations that are underdeveloped and they face energy poverty. Because you know who's stepping into the breach to provide that funding? They're still going to get power plants built. It may not be funded by the World Bank, but China's more than happy to fund those things. And in the process, you know, have more influence, set up. I just heard that they're setting up like police agencies in different countries so they can arrest dissidents and ship them back. This is being allowed. I suspect there's not an African nation on earth that if China comes in and builds a road and builds a coal-fired power plant, wouldn't allow them to set up a new police agency building in their country and arrest dissidents.
Yeah. The agenda is becoming clearer and clearer. You know, I used to give them the benefit of the doubt that really they want to save the planet. That's the whole goal of, you know, trying to fight against climate change. I believe their belief was, you know, actually an honest one. It isn't. What's really going on here is that they want to save the planet for themselves, and the heck with the rest of us. That's pretty much what's going on. And you can see that evident in these policies of ESG that they're putting out, in the way that they don't care about Africa, and in the way that they fly to these COP conferences in private jets and while talking down to the rest of us. They simply don't care about humanity. They care about themselves. All right. Well, let's not have any dead air here.
Note. Yeah, no. The other one that I wanted to talk about was something I wrote a quick little climate realism on yesterday that I found that just tickled me. Very funny. CBS reports, and this is breaking news to everyone listening. Did you know that weather impacts the taste of wine? It must be climate change that a small batch vineyard has inconsistent flavor in their vintages from one year to the next. But it turns out that either this author is just putting the climate change label every once in a while into their article in order to get it published or generate some kind of search engine optimization benefit. But it was a very meandering, very strange article that CBS Boston posted that was trying very hard to make the claim that somehow climate change is impacting the flavor consistency of wines.
Yeah, in one place in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, in Massachusetts specifically.
And of course, Massachusetts is the hot
center of the universe for wine tasting.
Yeah, I was about to say it's the center. It's the center of wine production in the world is Massachusetts. They can only produce wine there now because the planet has warmed modestly. And it's not like 200 years ago they were producing a lot of wine in Massachusetts during the little ice age, right? So now small producers. I mentioned I note that I don't drink wine, but I do drink whiskey and used to drink beer. I don't do that anymore. And I always supported microbreweries and micro distilleries. Their product from year to year can vary. It's all based on the weather. That's, and as you mentioned in your article, how you get a consistent wine is you blend wines over time. Now, any wine collector, any connoisseur of wine will tell you that even the Rothschilds, I don't know all the different major wineries, but I've heard Rothschild, Lafite, Rothschild, 1 year will be a classic. It will be 100 years from now, it will be thousands and thousands of dollars for a single bottle. The year previously and the year after it, not so much. Well, it's the same vineyard. What was the difference? Weather, and that was true before anyone ever uttered the word global warming or phrase global warming or climate change, right?
Well, and a very popular, I think it's more popular in Europe than it is here, but the Eichwein that I believe was invented officially in Germany in the late 1600s, earlier 1700s, somewhere in there, when there was a big early frost and they had to collect their grapes and squeeze them while they're still frozen to try and get it as fast as they could. Yeah. And so what they ended up with was something that the sugars were concentrated a lot better. We have known since before the Romans that weather impacts the taste of wine. It is absurd to me that this would be some kind of a revelation or that they would try to spin this into something new.
And well, the important part of your article is the fact that over the past 30 years, the weather hadn't changed there in Massachusetts.
Right.
So
and
how is climate change affecting their wine?
That's the key too. These vineyards are like less than 30 years old. So they're saying that they can taste climate change in their flavors of their wine from year to year in a vineyard that's less than 30 years old.
I'd like, there's the cartoon we should have is someone popping the cork on a bottle of wine and sniffing it and go, I can smell the climate change.
Yeah,
there was a line in the article.
They may say something like, "Oh, this wine has hints of thunderstorms."
Anthony, you made that joke, but there is actually a line in the CBS Boston story that's something along the lines of the flavor of recent vintages is warming.
Flavors.
They can taste the warming in recent vintages. My goodness, give me a break. That's some tenuous connection there.
Yeah. So it just goes to show you here, you look at the data and the data that they ignore. They tell you all about what's happening with climate change based on supposition, extrapolation, interpretation, whatever. But when you go down to the data, you find that, things are doing great. Just like I said earlier, we are living in an era of abundance as far as crops go, whether it's grapes or corn or wheat or rice or anything, rutabagas even. We are doing great as a humanity. And the powers that be, so to speak, the people that are flying to all these COP conferences and so forth, running ESG scams and whatever, look down upon you because they don't want all these humans on the planet. They really just want the planet for themselves. That's what it boils down to. Andy found a quiz on the New York Times for reducing your carbon footprint. This might be kind of fun to have a quick look at. And so, let's find out. What's the best way to reduce your carbon footprint? So some of the questions here are, buying fewer things. Well, so far that's worked here for this Christmas season, but it has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with inflation. Lowering the room temperature, Yeah, you could do that, I suppose. But you know what's interesting about room temperature is that the whole climate thing got started in June 1988 with Dr. James Hansen, who was going to do a testimony before Congress. His sponsor, Timothy Worth, a Democrat from Colorado, got with the Weather Service, or then it was called the Weather Bureau, and asked what is going to be the hottest day in June. And they told him. And that's when they scheduled the hearing. The night before the hearing, they went into the conference room, opened the windows, and screwed up the thermostat so that the hearing was sweatingly hot. And one of the things that Timothy Worth said after they made this presentation, while everybody is sweating, where they're talking about future global warming is going to destroy the planet, and we need money now to solve this crisis, he said people were sweating and it was bliss. And you can look this up for yourself. It was on an episode, a PBS documentary episode. It's absolutely factual. So the question is, if your science was so strong, so valid, why do you need to do all this crazy stagecraft to get people to believe in global warming? And it's been that way ever since. Eating a vegetarian diet, living car-free, eating organic food, using renewable. What is renewable electricity? Is that can we recycle electricity? I don't know.
I knew it, that the vegetarian diet, and watch, the vegan diet is going to be either medium or large as well. Andy is doing a great job on this quiz.
Yeah.
Oh, darn. I messed it up. Jinxed it now. Anyway.
It's
They're
all
about
it's all liberals telling other people how they should live.
Avoiding
You pick a liberal cause and you'll find it on this list, right? Vegans and animal rights advocates aren't doing this because they're concerned about the climate. They're doing it because they're concerned about animal welfare. And so they support this, right?
I want to talk about avoiding
pick a liberal cause. And I like the fact that they try and tie it all into justice and equity, and we can have, environmental justice and social justice. Hold it. If you found out that there was a group of the population that if you suppressed them, climate change would go away, would you be in favor of that? That would be against environmental justice, but it would be good for the climate, maybe. I'm just saying that they're trying to tie every liberal cause into climate change.
Right. And here's the thing. All of the stuff that they have on this list has been going on for, a decade or more, pushing these things. It hasn't made any difference. Carbon dioxide continues to increase. But I want to talk about avoiding a long flight. We have a fantastic climate conference coming up in February. And I would encourage every one of you to go to heartland.org right now, or climateconference.heartland.org right now, and sign up before the end of the month, because that's when we got the special going on. And if possible, book the longest flight that you can to get there, just to spite these folks. And come out and visit us. It's February 23rd through the 25th in Orlando, in Florida, where, your right to free speech will be protected by a lot of people that are carrying the Second Amendment. And you'll be able to kibitz with all of us. We will all be there. We'll be able to talk about things and do presentations, and we're going to be streaming it live if you can't make that long flight. But we encourage you to come visit us at ICCC 15 and, share your views with us and get the new information that we'll be presenting. It's going to be gangbusters. We got a lot of great topics lined up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And so, plus that, you can make a long weekend out of it if you want to. Go over to Disneyland, visit the Everglades, see the endangered alligators that are being killed by climate change, all that fun stuff.
Can you imagine if the Biden administration decided to show up in full force to refute us, to actually debate us on climate change? Buttigieg and Kerry and all of them flying down in their individual private jets because they couldn't fly together. That would be terrible. They couldn't take a bus from DC, a group bus. No, they each fly in their private jets. They want us to not travel at all, and certainly not fly long distances, while they fly in private jets consistently. but they're important. As you know, that was Kerry's response. Why do you not fly commercial? He says, because I'm important.
Yeah, well, you know, that's what I've been saying. They don't care a whit about humanity. They care about saving the planet for themselves. You know, they want the south of France to be less cluttered, you know, that sort of thing. It's just literally that. So on that note, I think we're going to close out the show. We've talked about a bunch of different things, and, you know, we appreciate every one of you for watching. We would like to encourage you to visit climaterealism.com and also climateataglance.com for your references, for things that, you know, everything associated with climate, weather and climate, all that is there for you to use in arguments and basically to show these folks that the data really says something completely different than what they're pushing. And so on that note, I'm going to say Merry Christmas and goodbye. For Linnea and for Sterling, I'm Anthony Watts of the Heartland Institute. Good day and Merry Christmas.